Tell us, where in the world are you watching from? Now, let's dive into today's story. Chapter 1. The Perfect Life. Bruce Hancock stood in his spacious home office, watching through the window as his wife Cassandra tended to their garden. 15 years of marriage, and she still moved with the same graceful precision that had first caught his attention at Fort Bragg. Back then, she was Lieutenant Cassandra Chambers, a military intelligence officer with sharp green eyes and an even sharper mind. Now she was simply his wife, mother to their 13-year-old son Daniel, and the foundation of what everyone called their perfect life. Bruce had built this life methodically, the same way he'd once planned military operations during his 8 years as an Army tactical analyst. After leaving the service, he channeled that strategic thinking into civilian success, first as a security consultant, then as owner of Hancock Strategic Solutions, a firm that designed security systems for high-profile clients. The irony wasn't lost on him that he spent his days protecting other people's secrets while remaining blissfully unaware of those festering in his own home. Their house reflected Bruce's attention to detail, a sprawling colonial in the suburbs of Richmond, Virginia, complete with state-of-the-art security systems he'd personally designed. Motion sensors, cameras, reinforced doors, and yes, a safe room. He'd insisted on it after Daniel was born, claiming it was for home invasions or natural disasters. Cassandra had rolled her eyes, but indulged what she called his military paranoia. Daniel burst through the front door, backpack sliding off his shoulder as he headed for the kitchen. At 13, he was already showing signs of Bruce's analytical nature, though tempered by his mother's charm. He was the kind of kid who got straight A's without trying too hard and had friends who genuinely liked him, not just his family's money. "Dad, can Jake Daly come over this weekend?" Daniel called out, grabbing an apple from the counter. His parents are going out of town, and his sister's supposed to watch him, but she's useless. Bruce smiled. Jake was Daniel's best friend since elementary school, a good kid from a solid family. James and Miranda Daly were the kind of neighbors Bruce actually trusted, which was saying something for a man who professionally assumed everyone was hiding something. "Sure, but ask your mother first," Bruce replied, closing his laptop. He'd been reviewing financial reports, noting the steady growth of his company. 3 new contracts this quarter, including one with a prominent law firm that wanted their buildings secured against corporate espionage. Business was good, family was solid, and life felt stable. That evening, the Hancock family sat around their mahogany dining table, sharing the day's events over Cassandra's famous lasagna. It was a ritual Bruce cherished. No phones, no television, just conversation. Cassandra talked about her volunteer work at the local animal shelter, a passion she'd developed after leaving the military. Daniel regaled them with stories from school, including a detailed account of how his science teacher, Mr. Gregory Conway, had made chemistry actually cool with some explosive demonstration. "Mr. Conway sounds like quite the teacher," Bruce observed, noting how Daniel's eyes lit up when talking about the man. "He's awesome," Daniel gushed. "He was in the Army too, like you and Mom. Says he was an explosives expert or something before he started teaching." Cassandra smiled, but Bruce caught something in her expression, a flicker of something he couldn't quite identify. In his line of work, he learned to read micro-expressions, and that split-second look bothered him more than he cared to admit. After dinner, while Daniel worked on homework and Cassandra cleaned up, Bruce retreated to his office to review security footage from a client's building. It was routine work, but it kept his skills sharp. As he scrolled through hours of mundane hallway cameras, his mind wandered to that look on Cassandra's face. In 15 years of marriage, he'd become an expert on his wife's expressions, and something about her reaction to Conway's name felt off. Later that night, as they prepared for bed, Bruce mentioned the teacher again. "This Conway fellow seems to have made quite an impression on Daniel." Cassandra was brushing her teeth, and in the mirror, Bruce watched her shoulders tense slightly. "Yes, well, Daniel's always been good at science. It's nice to have a teacher who challenges him. Have you met him? At parent-teacher conferences?" Briefly, she spat out toothpaste and rinsed. "He seems professional." The pause was minimal, but Bruce caught it. In his world, pauses meant secrets, and secrets meant problems. He filed the information away, the same way he'd once cataloged enemy movement patterns. Probably nothing, but Bruce Hancock hadn't survived 8 years of military intelligence by ignoring his instincts. As Cassandra slipped into bed beside him, Bruce stared at the ceiling, mind racing despite his exhaustion. Tomorrow, he decided he'd do a little research on Gregory Conway. After all, it never hurt to know more about the people influencing his son. Chapter 2. Cracks in the Foundation. Bruce's investigation into Gregory Conway began the next morning with a simple Google search that yielded frustratingly little information. Public records showed Conway was 38, divorced, no children, and had indeed served in the Army as an explosive ordnance disposal specialist before transitioning to education 5 years ago. He'd been teaching at Daniel School for 2 years, maintained a clean record, and by all accounts was well-liked by students and faculty. But Bruce's military training had taught him that the most dangerous enemies were often the most ordinary-seeming ones. He spent his lunch break conducting a more thorough background check, using resources available through his security consulting business. Conway's military record was exemplary. 2 tours in Afghanistan, multiple commendations, honorable discharge. His divorce had been finalized 3 years ago, citing irreconcilable differences with no indication of infidelity or abuse. Still, something nagged at Bruce. Maybe it was the way Cassandra had said Conway seemed professional, or the slight hesitation before she answered. His wife was many things, but she'd never been a good liar, at least not to him. That evening, Bruce arrived home early to find Cassandra on a phone call in the kitchen. She was speaking quietly, almost whispering, and immediately ended the call when she saw him. "Who was that?" he asked casually, loosening his tie. "Oh, just the animal shelter. We're planning a fundraiser for next month." She smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. "How was your day?" Bruce had conducted enough interrogations to recognize deflection. The animal shelter was Cassandra's usual excuse for unexplained phone calls, volunteer meetings that ran late, and schedule changes. He'd never questioned it before because he trusted her completely. Now that trust felt naive. Over dinner, Daniel excitedly described a field trip his chemistry class was taking to a local laboratory. "Mr. Conway arranged it personally," he said between bites of meatloaf. "He knows someone who works there. We get to see real explosives being tested." "That's quite thoughtful of him," Bruce said, watching Cassandra's reaction carefully. Again, that micro-expression, a tightening around her eyes, gone so quickly he almost missed it. After Daniel went to bed, Bruce confronted his suspicions head-on. "Cass, is everything all right? You seem distant lately." She looked up from her book, genuine surprise crossing her features. "Distant? I don't know what you mean." "The phone calls, the late nights at the shelter, the way you react when we talk about Daniel's teacher." Bruce kept his voice level, non-accusatory. "I'm not trying to be paranoid, but something feels different." For a moment, he thought she might confess whatever was bothering her. Her face softened, and she set down her book. "Bruce, you know I love you, right? You and Daniel are my whole world." "Of course I know that." She moved closer on the couch, taking his hand. "Sometimes I think you forget that I had a life before you, before Daniel. Sometimes old friends reach out, and it brings back memories. That's all." It was a reasonable explanation, delivered with the sincerity that had made him fall in love with her. But Bruce's trained ear caught the careful construction of her words. Technically true, but designed to mislead. She was giving him just enough truth to deflect suspicion while hiding the real story. That night, Bruce lay awake long after Cassandra's breathing settled into sleep. His mind raced through possibilities, each more disturbing than the last. In his line of work, he'd seen what betrayal could do to a family, how quickly trust could crumble once the foundation was compromised. He'd helped clients recover from corporate espionage, blackmail, and theft, but he'd never imagined he might need to protect himself from someone sleeping beside him. The next morning, Bruce made a decision that would change everything. He called his office and cleared his afternoon schedule, then drove to Daniel's school. He told himself he was being paranoid, that he'd observed one interaction between Cassandra and Conway, and put his fears to rest. He parked across the street from the school at dismissal time, watching as students poured out of the building. Daniel emerged with Jake Daly, both boys laughing about something as they headed toward the pickup area. Bruce was about to start his car when he saw Cassandra's silver BMW pull up to the curb. But she didn't park in the designated pickup area. Instead, she drove around to the side of the building, near what looked like a staff parking area. Bruce watched as a man emerged from a side door, tall, lean, with the kind of confident posture that screamed military background. Even from a distance, Bruce could see this was Gregory Conway. What happened next made Bruce's blood run cold. Conway approached Cassandra's car, leaned down to the driver's window, and the two of them spoke for several minutes. There was nothing overtly romantic about the interaction, but Bruce recognized the body language. The way Conway's hand rested on the car door, how Cassandra tilted her head up to look at him, the subtle intimacy of their positioning. Then Conway glanced around, scanning the area with the practiced vigilance of someone who'd been trained to watch for threats. His eyes passed over Bruce's parked car without pause, but Bruce felt exposed nonetheless. This wasn't a chance encounter between parent and teacher. This was a clandestine meeting between two people who knew they had something to hide. Bruce started his engine and drove away before either of them could spot him. His hands gripped the steering wheel so tightly his knuckles went white, and a familiar cold fury settled in his chest. The same feeling he'd had in Afghanistan when intelligence indicated an imminent attack. He drove home in silence, mind already shifting into operational mode. 15 years of marriage, and Cassandra was having an affair with her son's teacher. The betrayal cut deep, but beneath the pain was something more dangerous. The methodical anger of a man who'd spent years learning how to neutralize threats. By the time he pulled into his driveway, Bruce Hancock had made another decision. He wouldn't confront them directly, wouldn't give them the chance to lie or manipulate or turn Daniel against him. Instead, he'd do what he did best: gather intelligence, plan carefully, and strike when they least expected it. After all, Cassandra might know him as a loving husband and father, but she'd apparently forgotten that he was also very, very good at war. Chapter 3: The Art of War. Bruce spent the next 2 weeks conducting surveillance with the precision of a military operation. He installed tracking software on Cassandra's phone while she showered, placed microscopic GPS devices in her car, and began monitoring their joint credit card statements for anomalous charges. What he discovered painted a picture of betrayal that ran deeper than he'd imagined. The affair had been going on for at least 6 months. Text messages recovered from Cassandra's phone revealed intimate conversations between her and Gregory Conway, filled with promises of a future together and complaints about the complications of their current situations. They met at a cheap motel outside town every Tuesday and Thursday afternoon, the same days Cassandra claimed to be volunteering at extended shelter meetings. But it wasn't just the adultery that enraged Bruce. Reading through their messages, he discovered that Cassandra had been sharing intimate details about their marriage, their finances, and worst of all, about Daniel. She told Conway about Bruce's military background, his security business, and even about the safe room in their house. Information that could be used against his family was being pillow-talked to a man who was actively trying to steal his wife. The final straw came when Bruce discovered Conway's true intentions. Hidden in a deleted conversation thread, he found messages where Conway discussed his financial troubles, mounting debts from his divorce, student loans, and credit card bills that teaching couldn't cover. Cassandra had apparently offered to help, mentioning Bruce's successful business and their substantial savings account. Conway wasn't just seducing Bruce's wife. He was positioning himself to financially benefit from the destruction of their marriage. The man was a predator, using his position as Daniel's teacher to get close to the family, exploiting their son's admiration to gain access to his mother. Bruce's rage crystallized into something colder and more dangerous than simple anger. This wasn't just about his marriage anymore. This was about protecting his son from a manipulative sociopath who'd infiltrated their lives. He began planning his revenge with the same methodical approach he'd once used to plan military operations. The first step was reconnaissance, understanding his enemy's routines, weaknesses, and fears. Conway lived alone in a modest apartment, drove an aging Honda, and seemed to have few close relationships outside of his school colleagues. More importantly, his explosive ordnance background made him paranoid about certain things: car bombs, package explosives, and sudden loud noises. Cassandra's weaknesses were more personal. Despite her military training, she'd grown comfortable in civilian life, letting her guard down in ways that would have been unthinkable during her service years. She trusted their home security system implicitly because Bruce had designed it, never considering that he could use it against her. The second step was psychological warfare. Bruce began making subtle changes to their daily routines, designed to increase stress and paranoia without being obvious. He adjusted the home's temperature controls to make certain rooms uncomfortably hot or cold. He programmed lights to flicker occasionally, just enough to be noticed but not enough to seem broken. He moved small items, Cassandra's coffee mug, her favorite pen, her reading glasses, creating a sense of unease without an obvious cause. Meanwhile, he started dropping comments about infidelity in casual conversation. Stories about clients whose marriages had ended badly, news articles about adultery, observations about how you never really know someone. Nothing direct, nothing accusatory, but enough to plant seeds of guilt and fear. The psychological pressure began taking its toll. Cassandra became increasingly nervous, jumping at unexpected sounds and checking her phone obsessively. She started having trouble sleeping, which Bruce knew because he monitored their bedroom with motion sensors he'd secretly installed. Conway, too, showed signs of stress. Bruce had begun following him occasionally, always staying far enough back to avoid detection, but close enough to be felt as a presence. He knew from experience that trained soldiers could sense when they were being watched, and Conway's military background made him susceptible to this kind of psychological pressure. After 3 weeks of careful preparation, Bruce was ready to implement the most crucial phase of his plan. He spent an entire weekend alone while Cassandra took Daniel to visit her parents, using the time to modify their home security system in ways that would give him complete control over their environment. He installed additional cameras in hidden locations, programmed new sequences into the lighting and temperature controls, and most importantly, modified the safe room he'd built years earlier. What had once been designed for protection would now serve a very different purpose. On Sunday evening, as Cassandra and Daniel returned from their trip, Bruce greeted them with genuine warmth. To his wife, he probably seemed like his normal self, perhaps even more affectionate than usual. But Bruce was already deep in operational mode, seeing his family home as a battlefield and everyone in it as either assets or targets. "How was the drive back?" he asked, hugging Daniel and kissing Cassandra's cheek. "Long," she sighed, dropping her purse on the kitchen counter. "Mom sent her love. She's still asking when we're going to visit again." "Soon," Bruce promised, knowing it was a lie. After what was coming, there wouldn't be any more family visits, no more normal conversations, no more pretending everything was fine. That night, Bruce lay in bed listening to his wife's breathing and reviewing his plan one final time. Everything was in place. Conway thought he was seducing a vulnerable military wife. Cassandra thought she was having a secret affair with a charming teacher. Neither of them realized they were walking into a trap designed by someone who'd spent years learning how to destroy enemies without them ever seeing it coming. Phase 1 had been reconnaissance and psychological preparation. Phase 2 would be active manipulation, using their own guilt, fear, and desires against them. And Phase 3 would be justice, delivered with the cold precision of a man who'd never learned to forgive betrayal. Bruce closed his eyes and smiled in the darkness. Tomorrow, he'd begin teaching his wife and her lover a lesson about the consequences of underestimating Bruce Hancock. Chapter 4. The Hunter Becomes the Hunted. Bruce's campaign of psychological warfare intensified over the following weeks with surgical precision. He began by exploiting Conway's military background and inherent paranoia. Using resources from his security consulting business, Bruce arranged for Conway to receive anonymous packages at school, empty boxes with no return address, delivered at irregular intervals. To anyone else, they might seem like harmless pranks, but to someone with explosive ordnance training, unexplained packages were potential bombs. The effect was immediate. Conway began arriving at school earlier and leaving later, scanning the parking lot nervously before approaching his car. He started eating lunch in his classroom instead of the faculty lounge, avoiding crowded areas where a package might be waiting. Bruce monitored these changes through carefully placed surveillance, watching his target's confidence erode day by day. Meanwhile, he escalated the psychological pressure on Cassandra through their home environment. The security system he designed now worked against her, creating an atmosphere of subtle menace. Motion sensors triggered false alarms in empty rooms. Door locks engaged and disengaged randomly throughout the night. The temperature fluctuated wildly, making certain areas of the house uncomfortable at unpredictable times. "I think we need to have the house looked at," Cassandra mentioned one morning over coffee, dark circles under her eyes indicating another sleepless night. "Things keep malfunctioning." "Really? I haven't noticed anything," Bruce replied innocently, sipping his coffee. "What kind of malfunctions?" She described the various incidents. Lights flickering, locks acting strangely, temperature changes, while Bruce listened with feigned concern. "I'll have our technician come out this week," he promised, knowing full well that he controlled every system she'd mentioned. The real masterstroke came when Bruce discovered that Conway had a younger sister, Sue Cooley, who lived in North Carolina with her husband and 2 young children. Public records showed she was a social worker with no criminal background, an innocent woman whose only crime was being related to the man trying to destroy Bruce's family. Bruce didn't plan to hurt Sue, but he could certainly use her to increase Conway's paranoia. He began sending anonymous letters to Conway's apartment, typed messages that mentioned details about Sue's family that only careful surveillance could have revealed: her children's names, her husband's workplace, their home address. The letters contained no threats, just demonstrated knowledge, which was often more terrifying than explicit danger. "I know about Sue," read one letter. "I know where she works. I know where your nephew goes to school." The psychological effect was devastating. Conway, already on edge from the mysterious packages at work, now believed someone was targeting his entire family. He began making frantic phone calls to his sister, urging her to be careful, to watch for strangers, to consider taking a vacation. Sue, confused and frightened, called the local police, who found no evidence of any actual threat. Bruce monitored Conway's growing desperation through intercepted phone calls and text messages. The man was unraveling, jumping at shadows, constantly looking over his shoulder. His work performance began to suffer as paranoia consumed his daily life. But Bruce's most devastating weapon was still to come. After weeks of careful preparation, he was ready to turn Conway and Cassandra against each other. Using his access to Cassandra's phone, Bruce began sending anonymous text messages to Conway, claiming to be a concerned friend who discovered that Cassandra was playing him. The messages suggested that Bruce was growing suspicious and that Cassandra was planning to end the affair to protect herself. "She's going to throw you under the bus," read one message. "Save yourself before she destroys you." Simultaneously, Bruce sent similar messages to Cassandra, claiming Conway was getting reckless and might expose their affair to save his own skin. The seeds of mutual distrust began to sprout immediately. Their next motel meeting, which Bruce observed from a distance, was tense and accusatory. Instead of their usual passionate encounter, Conway and Cassandra spent their time arguing, each accusing the other of compromising their secret. Their text messages afterward were filled with recriminations and suspicion. The psychological pressure was taking its toll on both of them, but Bruce wasn't finished. He'd learned patience during his military years, understanding that the most effective attacks were those that allowed the enemy to destroy themselves. The turning point came when Daniel innocently mentioned that Mr. Conway seemed stressed out lately. "He's been kind of jumpy in class," Daniel observed during dinner. "Jake thinks maybe he's sick or something." "Stress can affect people in different ways," Bruce replied thoughtfully. "Sometimes when people are hiding something, the guilt and worry make them act strangely." Cassandra's fork clattered against her plate. What do you mean? Oh, nothing specific. I was just thinking about human psychology. When someone's living a lie, their behavior changes. They become paranoid, defensive, prone to making mistakes. Bruce met his wife's eyes across the table. Fortunately, we don't have those kinds of secrets in our family. The look of terror that flashed across Cassandra's face was worth months of planning. She knew he knew, or at least suspected, but she couldn't be sure how much or what he planned to do about it. That night, Bruce implemented the final phase of his psychological campaign. Using the modified security system, he triggered every sensor in the house simultaneously at 3 a.m., flooding their bedroom with flashing lights and deafening alarms. As Cassandra bolted upright in bed, disoriented and terrified, Bruce calmly reached for his phone. "Must be a system malfunction," he said, pretending to check the security app. "I'll reset it." But the damage was done. Cassandra spent the rest of the night awake, staring at the ceiling, jumping at every small sound. The woman who'd once been confident enough to betray her husband was now afraid to sleep in her own bed. By morning, Bruce could see the toll his campaign was taking. Both Cassandra and Conway were exhausted, paranoid, and turning against each other. They were exactly where he wanted them, isolated, desperate, and completely unprepared for what was coming next. Because the psychological warfare had only been the appetizer. The main course was still to come. Chapter 5. The Perfect Storm. Bruce's opportunity came sooner than expected, delivered by Daniel's innocent enthusiasm for his upcoming chemistry field trip. The boy had been talking about it for weeks. A visit to a research laboratory where Mr. Conway's former military colleague worked, complete with demonstrations of controlled explosions and chemical reactions. "It's going to be so cool, Dad," Daniel said, practically bouncing in his chair during breakfast. "Mr. Conway says we'll get to see how they test explosive materials safely. Maybe I'll be a bomb expert like him when I grow up." Over his coffee cup, Bruce watched Cassandra's face tighten with worry. She'd been increasingly anxious about Daniel's admiration for Conway, probably fearing what might happen if their affair was discovered, and her son learned his hero was the man who destroyed their family. "That does sound educational," Bruce replied carefully. "When is this field trip again?" "Next Friday. We leave right after school and won't be back until evening." Daniel grabbed his backpack, already late for his ride with Jake Daly. "Oh, and Mr. Conway said parent chaperones can come if they want. Mom, you should totally come with us." The color drained from Cassandra's face. I'm not sure I can get the day off from the shelter." "That's too bad," Bruce said mildly. "I'd love to meet this Mr. Conway properly. Maybe I should volunteer to chaperone instead." The panic in Cassandra's eyes was unmistakable. The thought of Bruce and Conway in the same space, especially somewhere involving explosives, clearly terrified her. "No," she said quickly, then forced a smile. I'm sure I can rearrange my schedule." It sounds like a wonderful opportunity for Daniel. After Daniel left for school, Bruce made his move. "Actually, Cass, I've been thinking we should both chaperone. Make it a family outing." "Bruce, that's not necessary. I insist." His tone was pleasant but firm. "Daniel's growing up so fast, and I want to be more involved in his school activities. Plus, I'm curious about these explosive demonstrations." "Professional interest, you understand." Cassandra agreed with obvious reluctance, but Bruce could see her mind racing, probably trying to figure out how to warn Conway without seeming suspicious. What she didn't realize was that Bruce had already considered this possibility and had plans in motion to handle it. That afternoon, Bruce called the school and spoke with the principal, identifying himself as a parent interested in chaperoning the field trip. During the conversation, he casually mentioned his military background and security expertise, suggesting he might be helpful in a facility dealing with explosive materials. "Oh, Mr. Conway did mention he was hoping to get another military veteran as a chaperone," the principal replied. "He seemed to think having someone with your background would be valuable for the students. Let me have him call you directly to coordinate." Bruce smiled as he hung up. Conway would have no choice but to call him, creating the first direct contact between them. It was time to let his target know he was being hunted. The call came that evening while Bruce was in his office. Conway's voice was professional but tense. Mr. Hancock? This is Gregory Conway, Daniel's chemistry teacher. I understand you're interested in chaperoning our field trip? That's right, Bruce replied, keeping his tone friendly. Daniel's told us so much about you. You've made quite an impression on him. He's a bright kid, really talented. There was a pause. I have to ask, did the principal mention that we'll be working around explosive materials? Given your security background, I wanted to make sure you're comfortable with that. Bruce leaned back in his chair, recognizing the probing question. Conway was trying to assess his knowledge and comfort level with dangerous situations. Mr. Conway, I spent 8 years in military intelligence. I think I can handle a few controlled demonstrations. Another pause, longer this time. Of course, I just like to be thorough about safety. I appreciate that. Safety is paramount when you're dealing with explosives. Bruce let that hang in the air for a moment. I'm looking forward to meeting you properly. Daniel has such respect for you, and Cassandra speaks of you often. The sharp intake of breath on the other end was barely audible, but Bruce caught it. Conway was now wondering exactly what Cassandra had told her husband about him. Well, we'll see you Friday morning then, Conway said, his voice slightly strained. Wouldn't miss it, Bruce replied, then added casually, Oh, and Mr. Conway? I hope you've been feeling all right lately. Daniel mentioned you seemed stressed. Nothing serious, I hope. No, just busy with lesson planning. You know how it is. I'm sure, Bruce said. Sometimes when we're under pressure, we make poor decisions. The important thing is recognizing our mistakes before they become bigger problems. The line went quiet for so long that Bruce wondered if Conway had hung up. Finally, the teacher's voice came back, barely controlled. Yes. Well, I'll see you Friday. As Bruce ended the call, he was already visualizing how Friday would unfold. Conway was now terrified that Bruce knew about the affair and was planning some kind of confrontation. Cassandra would be equally panicked, caught between her husband and lover in a situation she couldn't control. But Bruce's plan was far more sophisticated than a simple confrontation. He'd spent weeks studying the laboratory they'd be visiting, using his security connections to obtain building schematics and safety protocols. What he discovered had given him an idea that was both elegant and devastating. The research facility had a specialized safe room designed for containing explosive accidents, thick concrete walls, reinforced steel door, and a separate ventilation system. It was meant to protect the rest of the building if something went wrong during testing. Bruce had realized that such a room would be perfect for a different kind of containment. Somewhere isolated, soundproof, and escape-proof. Somewhere he could have a private conversation with his wife and her lover without any interruptions. He spent the rest of the week making final preparations, including some special modifications to items he'd be bringing on the field trip. By Friday morning, everything was in place for the culmination of his carefully orchestrated campaign. As he kissed Cassandra goodbye before they left for the school, Bruce whispered in her ear, I love you, darling. No matter what happens today, remember that everything I do is to protect our family. The terror in her eyes told him she understood exactly what he meant. Chapter 6. Into the Lion's Den. The field trip began innocently enough. Bruce arrived at the school to find a small group of students and parents gathering around a yellow school bus, their excited chatter filling the morning air. Daniel was practically vibrating with enthusiasm, explaining to anyone who'd listen about the explosive demonstrations they'd be seeing. Conway appeared more composed than Bruce had expected, greeting parents with professional courtesy and reviewing safety protocols with his usual attention to detail. But Bruce caught the tension in the man's shoulders, the way his eyes kept scanning the group as if looking for threats. Mr. Hancock, Conway said when they were introduced, extending his hand with forced confidence. Daniel's father. I've heard so much about you. All good things, I hope, Bruce replied, shaking hands perhaps a moment longer than necessary. Conway's grip was firm, but slightly damp with perspiration. Cassandra's told me quite a bit about you as well. Cassandra, standing nearby with the other parents, went pale at the exchange. She'd been quiet all morning, claiming a headache, but Bruce knew her real discomfort came from being trapped between the two men with nowhere to run. The drive to the laboratory took 40 minutes, during which Bruce sat near the front of the bus, occasionally chatting with other parents while keeping Conway in his peripheral vision. The teacher spent most of the trip reviewing safety procedures with the students, but Bruce noticed how his voice carried a slight tremor whenever Daniel asked questions about explosive materials. The Meridian Research Laboratory was an impressive facility, a sprawling complex of modern buildings surrounded by high-security fences and warning signs about hazardous materials. Dr. Patricia Ellis, Conway's former colleague, met them at the visitors center with the kind of enthusiasm that suggested she didn't get many opportunities to show off her work to interested audiences. "Welcome to Meridian," she announced to the group. "Today you'll see how we safely test explosive materials for military and civilian applications. Mr. Conway has assured me you're all mature enough to handle this responsibility." The tour began in a classroom where Dr. Ellis explained the science behind controlled explosions, showing slides and videos of various tests. The students were fascinated, asking intelligent questions that made it clear Conway was indeed an excellent teacher. Under different circumstances, Bruce might have genuinely liked the man. As they moved through the facility, Bruce noted the security cameras, emergency exits, and safety protocols with professional interest. But his real attention was on the building's layout, particularly the location of the specialized containment room Dr. Ellis mentioned during her safety briefing. "In the unlikely event of an accident," she explained, "we have a blast-resistant safe room designed to contain any explosive mishaps. It's built to military specifications. Reinforced concrete walls, steel-lined doors, independent air supply. Nothing gets in or out unless we want it to." Bruce caught Cassandra's eye and saw his own dark thoughts reflected in her expression. She was beginning to understand that he'd brought them here for a reason. The demonstration took place in a controlled testing chamber where Dr. Ellis and Conway showed the students how small amounts of explosive material could be safely detonated and analyzed. Daniel was enthralled, asking technical questions that impressed even the professional researchers. As the group prepared to move to the next section of the tour, Bruce made his move. He approached Dr. Ellis with a concerned expression. "Excuse me, doctor. I'm wondering if I could have a private word with you about some security concerns." "Security concerns?" Bruce lowered his voice, glancing meaningfully at the other parents and students. "I run a security consulting firm, and I've noticed some potential vulnerabilities in your perimeter systems. Nothing urgent, but perhaps we could discuss it privately? I'd hate for anything to compromise such important work." Dr. Ellis looked intrigued and slightly worried. As a researcher dealing with explosive materials, security was always a concern. "Of course. Let me have my assistant continue the tour while we talk." "Perfect." Bruce turned to the group with an apologetic smile. "Dr. Ellis and I need to discuss some technical matters. Why don't you continue with the tour? We'll catch up shortly." Conway looked suspicious, but couldn't object without seeming unprofessional. Cassandra started to say something, but Bruce cut her off with a meaningful look. "Actually, Mr. Conway, perhaps you and Cassandra could join us," Bruce suggested. "Given your military background, your perspective on security matters would be valuable. And Cassandra's intelligence experience might be helpful too." Conway's face went white. The suggestion was reasonable on the surface, but the way Bruce had phrased it, emphasizing their military backgrounds while separating them from the group, clearly had sinister implications. "I should stay with the students," Conway protested weakly. "Nonsense," Dr. Ellis interjected. "My assistant can handle the group for a few minutes. Your expertise would indeed be valuable." Bruce smiled. "Excellent. Why don't we use that secure room you mentioned? We wouldn't want to be overheard discussing security vulnerabilities." The trap was closing, and there was nothing Conway or Cassandra could do to escape it without creating a scene that would endanger their reputations and Daniel's safety. They followed Dr. Ellis and Bruce down a corridor toward the containment room, each step taking them further from help and deeper into Bruce's carefully constructed web. As they approached the reinforced door of the safe room, Bruce felt the familiar calm that had always settled over him before military operations. Everything was proceeding exactly as planned. His enemies were walking willingly into the perfect killing ground, isolated, soundproof, and escape-proof. Dr. Ellis input her security code, and the massive door swung open, revealing a room that looked more like a bunker than a laboratory. Thick concrete walls, no windows, a single entrance, and air circulation systems that could be controlled from the outside. "After you," Bruce said pleasantly, gesturing for Conway and Cassandra to enter first. As they stepped across the threshold, he knew there was no turning back. The next few minutes would determine whether Bruce Hancock was the kind of man who could forgive betrayal or the kind who made his enemies pay for their mistakes in blood. The door closed behind them with a soft but final click. Chapter 7. Truth and Consequences. My wife shoved me and our son into the hidden safe room. "Stay here. Don't make a sound," she hissed before locking the heavy door. We huddled in the dark for hours. My son found something scratched into the concrete wall. I lit my phone to read it. It was my wife's handwriting. "If you are reading this," IT said, "I'm not sorry for what is going to happen to you." But that moment was still hours away. For now, Bruce stood in the containment room at Meridian Laboratory with his wife, her lover, and Dr. Ellis, watching as his carefully constructed plan reached its crescendo. "So, Mr. Hancock," Dr. Ellis began, pulling out a tablet to take notes, "what specific security vulnerabilities did you notice?" Bruce smiled coldly as he reached into his jacket pocket. "Actually, Doctor, I'm afraid I haven't been entirely honest with you." Instead of pointing out security flaws, Bruce withdrew a small device that looked like a garage door opener. Dr. Ellis's confusion was evident, but Conway recognized it immediately, his military training screaming warnings about improvised explosive devices. "Bruce, what are you doing?" Cassandra whispered, instinctively stepping closer to Conway. "I'm solving a problem," Bruce replied calmly. He held up the device. "This is a signal jammer, military grade. As of right now, no radio frequencies can get in or out of this room. Your cell phones won't work, your emergency beacons are useless, and the door control system has been temporarily disabled." Dr. Ellis reached for her phone, confirming Bruce's words as she found no signal. "I don't understand. What's going on here?" "Dr. Ellis, I apologize for involving you in this, but I needed a controlled environment for a very important conversation." Bruce's voice remained conversational, but his eyes were ice cold. "You see, my wife Cassandra and Mr. Conway have been having an affair for the past 6 months. They've been meeting at the Riverside Motel every Tuesday and Thursday, while she was supposedly volunteering at the animal shelter." The silence that followed was deafening. Conway's face went ashen, while Cassandra looked like she might collapse. Dr. Ellis backed toward the door, clearly wanting to escape whatever was about to unfold. "Bruce, please," Cassandra started, but he cut her off with a raised hand. "I've read your text messages, Cassandra. I know about your plans to help Gregory with his financial problems using our joint savings account. I know you've shared intimate details about our marriage, our home security, and our son." His voice remained steady, but the fury beneath was unmistakable. "What I want to know is how long you thought you could continue this betrayal before I found out." Conway finally found his voice. "Look, Mr. Hancock, I know how this looks, but what, Gregory?" Bruce interrupted. "But you thought you could seduce my wife, manipulate my son's admiration for you, and eventually destroy my family without consequences? Did you really believe your military training made you clever enough to outmaneuver me?" Bruce began pacing the small room like a caged predator. "For weeks, I've been watching you both deteriorate under pressure. The mysterious packages, the anonymous messages, the psychological campaign designed to make you paranoid and turn against each other. You never suspected that every moment of fear, every sleepless night, every paranoid thought was carefully orchestrated by me." Dr. Ellis had gone completely still, recognizing that she was witnessing something far more dangerous than a simple confrontation. "Mr. Hancock, perhaps we should involve law enforcement." "No," Bruce said firmly. "This is a family matter that requires a family solution." He reached into his other pocket and withdrew what looked like a small remote control. "This device controls the room's ventilation system." "Dr. Ellis, you mentioned this room has an independent air supply, correct?" "Yes, but and the air circulation can be controlled remotely?" Dr. Ellis nodded reluctantly, beginning to understand the implications. Gregory, with your explosive ordnance background, you'll appreciate the elegance of this solution, Bruce continued. I've introduced a small canister of concentrated nitrogen into the ventilation intake. Not enough to cause an explosion, but sufficient to gradually reduce the oxygen content in this room over the course of several hours. Conway's military training kicked in immediately. You're talking about asphyxiation. I'm talking about justice, Bruce corrected. The three of you are going to sit in this room and experience what it feels like to slowly lose everything that matters to you, the same way I've lost everything that mattered to me. Cassandra was crying now, mascara running down her cheeks. Bruce, please think about Daniel. Whatever happens to us, he needs his mother. Daniel needs parents he can trust, Bruce replied without sympathy. Parents who don't lie to him, who don't betray their family security for sexual gratification. Dr. Ellis, who had been frantically examining the door controls, looked up with growing panic. The electronic locks aren't responding. Even if I had my key card, the system's been overridden. 2 hours, Bruce announced, checking his watch. That's how long the nitrogen will take to reduce oxygen levels to dangerous levels. Plenty of time for you to explain to each other how your selfishness has led to this moment. He moved toward the door, which, despite Dr. Ellis's attempts, remained firmly sealed. But Bruce knew exactly how to open it. After all, he'd spent considerable time studying the facility security systems. Where are you going? Conway demanded, finally showing some courage. Back to the tour. My son is expecting me, and I wouldn't want to disappoint him. Bruce paused at the door. Don't worry about Daniel, by the way. After you're gone, I'll raise him to understand the importance of loyalty and the consequences of betrayal. He'll grow up knowing that his mother died because she chose to destroy her family. As Bruce manipulated the hidden override controls he'd discovered during his reconnaissance, the door began to open. Behind him, he could hear Cassandra screaming his name, Conway shouting threats, and Dr. Ellis pleading for reason. But Bruce Hancock had moved beyond reason. He'd crossed a line that separated the civilized world from the brutal logic of absolute justice. In his mind, he wasn't committing murder. He was performing an execution. The door sealed behind him with a soft hiss, leaving 3 people trapped in an increasingly dangerous environment while he walked calmly back to rejoin his son's field trip. After all, he had promised Daniel they'd see some explosive demonstrations today. Chapter 8, The Reckoning. Bruce rejoined the tour group with perfect composure, his expression showing nothing but mild interest as Dr. Ellis's assistant demonstrated various testing procedures. Daniel immediately bounded over to him, eyes bright with excitement. Dad, where were you? We just saw them test a small charge that could blow up a car engine. Daniel's enthusiasm was infectious, and several other students gathered around as he recounted the demonstration. Security consultation with Dr. Ellis, Bruce replied smoothly. Very interesting facility. Where's your mother? Still talking with Dr. Ellis and Mr. Conway, I think. They've been gone a while. Daniel shrugged, already distracted by the next demonstration. Bruce nodded, checking his watch. 15 minutes had passed since he'd sealed the containment room. By now, his trapped victims will be starting to feel the effects of reduced oxygen, slight dizziness, perhaps some difficulty concentrating. They'd have plenty of time to contemplate their situation before things became truly desperate. The tour continued for another hour, during which Bruce played the role of interested parent perfectly. He asked intelligent questions about safety protocols, complimented the facility's security measures, and showed appropriate concern when Dr. Ellis failed to return from her consultation. I should probably check on my wife and Dr. Ellis, he told the assistant tour guide. They've been discussing security matters for quite a while. Of course, Mr. Hancock. The containment room is down that corridor, 3rd door on the right. Bruce made his way back to the sealed room, noting with satisfaction that the facility security cameras had been discreetly disabled by a small electromagnetic pulse device he'd activated earlier. There would be no record of his movements in this section of the building. He stood outside the containment room for a moment, listening. Through the thick walls, he could hear muffled voices, urgent, panicked conversations punctuated by what sounded like someone pounding on the door. The oxygen depletion would be noticeable now, causing anxiety and shortness of breath. Bruce input the override code and cracked the door open just enough to speak through the gap. "How are we feeling in there?" he asked conversationally. "Bruce, please." Cassandra's voice was strained. "Dr. Ellis has nothing to do with this. Let her go." "Dr. Ellis has everything to do with this," Bruce replied calmly. "She's a witness to your confession. And more importantly, she's experiencing the same helplessness that I felt when I discovered my wife was betraying our family." Conway's voice came next, hoarse with emotion. "I'll end it, okay? I'll transfer to another school, move away. Just let us out." "Gregory, you still don't understand. This isn't about ending the affair. It's about consequences. Actions have repercussions, and those repercussions shouldn't be negotiable." Bruce checked his watch again. Another 30 minutes, and the oxygen levels would drop to genuinely dangerous levels. Time for the next phase of his plan. "I'm going to give you a choice," he announced. "In exactly 1 hour, I'll open this door. But only one of you will be allowed to leave. The other two will remain here to face the full consequences of their actions." The silence that followed was broken by Dr. Ellis's voice. "Mr. Hancock, I'm begging you. I have a daughter. She's only 8 years old. And I have a son who's 13, Bruce replied without emotion. "A son who's been unknowingly manipulated by a man he trusted, while his mother destroyed his family behind his back." "I'll stay," Conway said suddenly. "Let Dr. Ellis and Cassandra go. I'll take full responsibility." "How noble," Bruce observed. "But responsibility isn't the same as consequence. Besides, Cassandra needs to understand what betrayal costs." He could hear urgent whispering inside the room. The 3 prisoners trying to formulate some kind of plan. But Bruce had considered every possibility. The room was escape-proof, the ventilation system was under his control, and the facility's security would assume Dr. Ellis was still conducting her consultation. Bruce returned to the tour group, where Daniel was becoming slightly worried about his mother's absence. "Where's Mom?" Daniel asked. "And why is Mr. Conway taking so long with the security stuff?" "They're handling some very important matters," Bruce assured him. "Sometimes adult conversations take longer than expected." But Bruce could see doubt creeping into his son's expression. Daniel was intelligent enough to sense that something wasn't right, even if he couldn't articulate exactly what. The tour concluded with a final demonstration in the main testing chamber, after which the students were scheduled to return to school. As the group gathered their belongings, Bruce made his announcement. "I'm afraid there's been a slight complication," he told the assistant tour guide. "Dr. Ellis, my wife, and Mr. Conway are still deep in discussion about some security concerns. Would it be possible for the group to return to school while I wait for them to finish?" The assistant looked uncertain. "I suppose that would be okay. But are you sure they'll be much longer?" "I'm confident they'll be finished very soon," Bruce replied. As the school bus pulled away with Daniel and the other students, Bruce felt a moment of genuine sorrow. His son would never forgive him for what was about to happen, but that was a price Bruce was willing to pay for justice. He had one final visit to make to the containment room. Chapter 9. The Final Lesson. Bruce waited until the facility was nearly empty, just a skeleton crew of evening security guards who rarely ventured into the research wings. The isolation was perfect for what came next. When he opened the containment room door, the scene inside was exactly what he'd expected. Cassandra was slumped against one wall, her breathing labored and shallow. Conway sat beside Dr. Ellis, who appeared to be unconscious. The reduced oxygen had taken its toll over the past 2 hours. "Time's up," Bruce announced, stepping into the room with a small oxygen tank he'd retrieved from an emergency supply closet. Conway looked up with glassy eyes. "Please, Dr. Ellis, she needs medical attention." "Dr. Ellis is going to be fine," Bruce said, attaching a breathing mask to the oxygen tank. "But first, we're going to have a conversation about consequences." He administered oxygen to Dr. Ellis first, watching as her color improved and her breathing stabilized. She was an innocent victim in this, and Bruce had no intention of letting her die for his wife's crimes. "Here's what's going to happen," Bruce explained as Dr. Ellis regained consciousness. "Dr. Ellis, You're going to walk out of here and tell security that there was a brief malfunction with the ventilation system, but everyone is fine. You're going to forget everything you've heard in this room, because discussing it would endanger your career and your daughter's future. Dr. Ellis nodded frantically, understanding that her survival depended on her silence. Cassandra and Gregory, you have a more difficult choice ahead of you. Bruce helped Dr. Ellis to her feet and escorted her to the door. Remember, Doctor, for your daughter's sake, this conversation never happened. After Dr. Ellis left, Bruce sealed the door again and turned back to his wife and her lover. The oxygen tank would keep them conscious for the conversation he had planned. 15 years, Cassandra, he began quietly. 15 years of marriage, and you threw it away for what? A younger man with financial problems? The thrill of sneaking around behind your husband's back. Cassandra was crying again, but Bruce felt no sympathy. I gave you everything. A home, a family, security, love, and you decided none of that was enough. Bruce, please. No more pleading. He cut her off. It's time for truth. Tell me exactly how long this affair has been going on, and don't leave out any details. Over the next hour, Bruce extracted a full confession from both of them. The affair had started 8 months ago when Conway arrived at the school. Cassandra had been the aggressor initially, drawn to his military background and the excitement of forbidden romance. Conway had been vulnerable after his divorce, struggling financially, and Cassandra had offered both emotional and material support. They'd planned to wait until Daniel graduated before asking for a divorce, splitting Bruce's assets and starting a new life together. In their twisted logic, they convinced themselves they were being considerate by waiting. You were going to steal half of everything I built while making me think I was a loving husband and father, Bruce summarized. And Gregory, you were going to use your position as Daniel's teacher to manipulate my son into accepting you as a stepfather. It wasn't like that, Conway protested weakly. It was exactly like that, Bruce replied. You both calculated that I was weak enough, trusting enough, and stupid enough to be used and discarded when it suited your purposes. Bruce stood up and moved toward the ventilation controls. You were wrong about one thing, though. I'm not weak, and I don't forgive betrayal. What are you going to do? Cassandra whispered. I'm going to teach you the same lesson I learned in Afghanistan, Bruce replied. Sometimes the only way to stop an enemy is to destroy them completely. He began adjusting the ventilation system, but instead of introducing more nitrogen, he started pumping pure oxygen into the room. High oxygen concentration, he explained clinically. Extremely flammable. One spark, and this room becomes an incinerator. Conway, drawing on his explosive ordnance training, understood immediately. You're insane. I'm thorough, Bruce corrected. There's a small incendiary device attached to the ventilation system, set to activate in exactly 10 minutes. Enough time for me to reach my car and establish an alibi. But Bruce wasn't finished. This was where his planning reached its masterful culmination. However, I'm going to give you one final choice. Cassandra, there's an emergency override switch near the door. You can activate it and save Gregory's life, but doing so will trigger a different system, one that seals you in here permanently while he escapes. Cassandra looked at the switch, then at Conway, then back at Bruce. And if I don't activate it, then you both die together, just like you planned to live together. Bruce moved toward the door. Choose wisely, Cassandra. You have 9 minutes to decide whether your love is strong enough to die for, or if you're willing to kill the man you claim to love in order to save yourself. He sealed the door behind him and walked calmly toward the facility's exit. Behind him, he could hear muffled screaming and pounding, but the soundproof room contained all evidence of the final drama playing out inside. Bruce reached his car just as the first explosion echoed through the research complex. He sat in the driver's seat for a moment, watching emergency vehicles race toward the building, their sirens cutting through the evening air. His phone buzzed with a text message from Daniel. Dad, when are you and Mom coming home? I'm getting worried. Bruce started his engine and pulled out of the parking lot. By the time he reached home, the news would report a tragic accident at Meridian Laboratory, a malfunction in the containment room's ventilation system that led to an explosion. 2 casualties, both identified as victims of being in the wrong place at the wrong time. Daniel would grieve for his mother and his favorite teacher, never knowing that his father had orchestrated their deaths. Bruce would play the role of devastated widower, raising his son with the hard-learned wisdom that betrayal always has consequences. As he drove through the darkening suburbs toward home, Bruce Hancock felt the cold satisfaction of a mission completed. He discovered the enemy, planned their destruction, and executed justice with surgical precision. Some people might call it murder. Bruce called it war. And in war, there were no second chances for traitors. His phone rang, Daniel calling to check on him. Bruce answered with the voice of a concerned father, already beginning the performance that would define the rest of their lives together. After all, his son needed to learn that in this world, loyalty was everything, and betrayal was unforgivable. The lesson would serve Daniel well in the years to come. And there you have it. Another story comes to an end. What did you think? I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. If you enjoy this story, consider joining our community by subscribing. It means the world to us. For more stories like this one, check out the recommended videos on screen. And I'll see you there.